Hello and a very warm welcome to Guest for Change. My name is Michaela and I'm the Sustainability Representative for the Guest List. Today I have the incredible opportunity to interview Dr. Reiner HENGSTMANN. Businesses in poorer countries can start attracting more business investors?
I spent a couple of times, or I went a couple of times to Ethiopia, for example, right? And did certain projects in Ethiopia, but as well in Pakistan. The reason why I'm just mentioning this is that what I saw is, what I saw not only was really very interesting. There were certain industries which really were polluting the environment and impacting farmers and therefore impacting the food chain. So what I was just trying to say previously is those farmers now stood up and were campaigning, said, guys, this is not a way it's supposed to be, not at all, which in a way then triggered governments to react and to act, not only to react, but as well to act, coming up with rules and regulations and even shutting down factories. In China is the same that, or similar. There is one organization which is an NGO which started publishing wastewater results on the net, in the internet. On time wastewater results for certain industries. Now the Chinese government is even supporting them because they're using this tool to act, of course, to react first, but then as well to act. But you see, this is only working through external pressure, if I may call it like this, right? And then, putting them into a corner and saying, well, you have to do something now. Yeah, because, there is a right, every human being has a right for clean water and for clean air, right? And clean environment, put it this way, as, make sustainability as a basic human right. Maybe sustainability is too broad, but at least make, water, air, and, a clean environment is a basic human right.
So you're saying that the public does actually have a pressure of if they're coming together, they can actually bring a change, because I know there's many of the mentality of, we're not going to be able to do something, the government's more powerful than us, but you're literally giving live examples of how the community comes together and, like you said, pushing them in the corner and be like, change needs to happen now.
Look, a government, at least in certain democracies, being elected for 3, 4, 5 years, right? And then the term might be over. And an environment pollution might stay forever because you cannot solve it. So what is easier to do? You can just get rid of the government, right? And just push it into the right direction. But this is definitely easier than cleaning up contaminated sites, dealing with contaminated water, etc., and of course all the results due to environmental pollution.
How would you say this is best done? Because obviously we have marketing tactics, and then that's also perhaps where greenwashing comes into play. But how would you say is the best way to kind of bring awareness to consumers?
Being transparent and being honest. Being transparent, otherwise you will lose the game. The thing is, explaining to a consumer on the street or asking a consumer on the street what is sustainability, they will not understand. But if you just try it the other way around, and what you think, what could be your contribution to really change the way we are living in order to get into a better world, or to create a better world, or to create a better world, I think the response will be certainly better, because this is what people are really into. In Europe, for example, the last years we had very, very hot summers. Europe is not used to this. Forests are dying, water shortage, etc., etc., etc. So the people basically see what, the results of those frequent preaching. We have to do something because they are not being, facing those problems. Meaning they are most likely more aware. They're most likely more aware. Again, maybe not everyone, but it is definitely increasing. They are becoming more aware. I mean, frequently making campaigns, making easy campaigns, using the media. I mean, look, everybody is watching TV. I had a conversation just the other day here in Vietnam with someone. We were thinking, how could this be done?
Sure, because I know there are two different ways of like telling and giving awareness to climate change and so forth, and bringing change from an individualistic level and as well as from a business perspective. But would you say it is better to kind of give awareness in the sense encouraging people of how they individually can make a change, rather than the world is coming to an end, here are the facts, hardcore facts, and bring in scare tactics? What would you say is a better approach?
I think it's everyone's responsibility. Of course, the more the better. We are more stronger together, right? There's no question. But we have to we have to start somehow and somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the best place to start is at your home, right? Look where you can do things, whether it's electricity, whether it's waste, whether it's coming back to our original topic, fashion. Do we have to have every 4 weeks a new t-shirt and new pants? Is it really necessary, or should we better focus on quality and just make sure and treating this quality, because this is very sustainable, rather than throwing it away? So you start at home, and from home, involve your neighbors, involve the community, do the next steps. Yes, eventually we'll end up saying, now we have the global world, whenever this will be, recognizing that we have to do something, otherwise our planet Earth will not survive.
So it's a matter of planting that seed and having conversations like this. This is exactly why Guest for Change wanted to start it, is kind of to perpetuate these conversations. Yes, you may watch one, maybe you watch 2 of these videos, then you go further and do your own research, but it is a matter of planting that seed. And I love how you said it's starting from home, because that's essentially how the rest of your circle influencers get influencers per se. So I love that approach, and I think that's a great insight, and it's definitely something to look into, because when we've spoken to our previous guests, the whole approach, especially like let's say with Christian, when we were speaking about vegetarianism, not to say you need to be vegetarian, you can't eat meat, it's bad for the environment. Rather say, if you eat less meat, you are actually doing X, Y, Z. This is how you can help. This is your actual approach. This is how you can bring change. So it starts from the individual, starts from home, and then stretches further. So I really like that direction, and I do think that is something that needs to be implemented. And like you said, how everyone starts thinking in circles. But going back to, like you said, our first fashion topic, because I know that you've had extensive experience in many, many facets and fields. You actually pioneered the world's first environmental profit and loss account at Puma. Can you tell us a bit more about this framework and how it adds value to other businesses and investors?
To start a little bit really back in history, I recall I was CEO meeting in the UK, and this meeting was related to sustainability, and then somehow the question popped up: have we ever thought of externalities? Because I mean, how the business was at least done at this time, but really, very much tunnel focused. And it was basically a given, right? That you use water, you use air, and you pollute, and you use the supply chain. So we never were thinking, what is the impact, or what are even the costs of externalities? And then he said, okay, let's put a figure behind those externalities. This is basically what triggered the environmental profit and loss. Here as well, that time, I mean, it was a hard work with all the colleagues and as well with external parties. But it was amazing to see the result. At the end of the day, we came up with €1 million figure and saying, well, these are basically the cost of our business. This is, if nature would have or ecosystem services, if I may call it like this, would have a bank account, this is the money you have to pay them to give it to you, to provide you all the assets you are simply used to, to have them every day. What did it trigger? I think it triggered one thing. After really some time of digesting what does it mean in environmental profit and loss, it went into the accounting business. Meaning, right? Maybe not. Well, of course, the caring group is still doing or still calling it the environmental profit and loss, which is super, which is fine. But the most important thing is basically that this accounting technique is now within basically accounting techniques of bigger business. Saying a P&L, profit and loss, is not just the financial part. It is the financial part, plus the environmental part, plus the social part, and maybe other parts as well. So everything is impacting your business, and you have to account for this. And well, it's of course not like a financial statement or financial accounting, which you can do on a quarterly basis. Environmental changes, they take time. Meaning, if you would, for example, do an EPL or an environmental accounting every 3 months, you don't really see results, right? But you will see results over time if you do it once a year, once every 2 years. And then, of course, this gives you as well a tool where money is really spent or which costs a lot of money, where most likely you have to start adjusting screws and saying, oh, we were not aware that this tier, for example, in the supply chain is really impacting our business that much, is costing so much. Water, carbon dioxide, right? Waste. We were not aware of this. So basically, it was a starting point. And this is really good to see that it's being used by more and more corporations globally.
And it's amazing because you've taken a holistic approach and incorporated every single industry that's perhaps part of the process. And that's what our guests are also saying, is that it's not necessarily just the manufacturers involved. It's a person who then perhaps we're focusing on water management and so on and so forth. There's just so many tiers to it, and that also needs to be taken in consideration, definitely.
Yeah, it's like a pyramid, right? I mean, we are at the top. And of course, we were always acting at the top and not really looking down, and especially see how broad the pyramid is, and not necessarily industries, but I would say all the, we call them tiers, tier 1, tier 2, etc., up to tier 5, 6 suppliers. But if you go down the chain, for example, in textile, if you go to to the cotton fields in terms of leather, if you go to the cattle farms, for example, in terms of synthetics, if you go to the oil fields and you really put this in, you get the real cost of business, and of course what it cost the environment, and what it then will cost to change this. I mean, I recall that we, at the time, years back, we were figuring out how can we evaluate, how can we put costs behind carbon dioxide. So is it just, the credit, or is it, do we have to use other costs? Basically, we decided to use the cost, how much has to be spent to repair, right? This ton of carbon dioxide, for example, which were completely different figures. Carbon credit, $5 or $10 at that time, right? compared to, I think we used 3 or 4 times, the amount of money. So a completely different figure.
So it's a matter of, seems at time, and everything is constantly changing, and it all seems in a very much of an experimental game, and it seems that period has been so long, but it's still continuing, especially now that we're trying to transition into more circular models. And you mentioned the costs of certain aspects of bringing this whole circular mindset. What exactly do you see? Are there perhaps any, actually, let's go for this. What challenges do you foresee as facing in the future if we were to transition into a global circular way of doing things? Obviously there will be challenges, but do you see it seeing as a negative impact in certain ways?
But the thing is, we have to decide where should we start. If we just see what's being produced at the moment, what is in the pipeline of production. A lot of junk, if I may say so, is being produced, which most likely will never be going into a circular system, because it's just, right, take, make, and waste. We still have this linear system. We have to start now. We have as well to start thinking what to do with all the stuff which is already out, because we cannot say, okay, from today on we start circular with everything. So everything which was in the past, okay, maybe there is a solution, maybe not. We have to think as well about all the waste which has been created, all the waste which is still being created in order to sell, right? To manage this, in order to manage the future in terms of circularity. I don't know whether you get what I mean. It's not just starting now and saying circular from now on, all the rest.
Can't you think about it?
The thing is, what I was saying at the very beginning, circularity is a concept. You have to have a system in place on how to deal with the past, on how to deal where we are now, and especially on how to deal in the future with products and production.
Going on to our last 2 questions, I just want to ask, in a perfect world, how would you see this actually happening, in the sense that, for example, you get a Christmas cracker and you get all those small little toys that no one even uses them, maybe just for a few hours. How do you stop that cycle? How do you stop that business? How do you make those kind of businesses transform into a circular way? Do you see that actually ever happening?
This circularity relies on a concept. You can use materials for even those little tiny toys you use or you hang on your Christmas tree, which last then for 3 or 4 days, and then you pack it again, or in case you have to dispose it. If you design it, and again, you start with the design. If you design it in the right way with a circular mindset, saying, okay, either you can really keep it because it's produced in a way with high quality, right, which makes you reuse it, which is very sustainable, or you create it in a way that things can be dismantled, that things can be really separated, or, for example, if it has to be plastic, you just decide for one material. You don't even mix several materials as we are doing it now, and just, set up a system where those materials then will then be disposed and brought back into the system. I mean, this is definitely possible. And circularity is not for the big things. Here as well, circularity starts at home, right? Even at home, many things. Look, the old-fashioned way is not just throwing it into the trash can. If possible, wherever possible, you can compost, bring it back to nature, right? Whether it's clothes, you maybe give it to your, to friends you share within the family, and not throwing away. Creativity, rules, standards. It is possible for the tiniest thing up to the biggest thing. But everything starts with a concept, and how do I set up the system? How do I design the system? And how do I implement the system?
It's actually fascinating because with every guest, there seems to be a common theme of a pattern of design. It all starts with design, which is 100% true because, and it's not just design on the first aspect, it's a design on when it gets to that stage, then what's going to happen and so on and so forth. So even how you mentioned, if you dismantle something, like that is just even a great example of how a perfect design, when you could dismantle it and perhaps you can use one part for a vase and one part perhaps, I don't know, a doorstop and so forth. So it's a matter of breaking it down and being used in different ways, and that's the kind of definitions that we're also coming across. But as well as that, it all starts, there's the theme that it all starts with the individual, and how you're saying it also starts from home and the planting the seed of how do we impact our space, and then it goes out further and further, because that's when conversations start. That's when you start talking to your friends and family or public figures about this and so forth. But going to our very last question, and a very important one, I feel, because maybe perhaps no one asks these right questions, perhaps no one really gets to it because they've never thought of it. But what questions do you wish more people were asking you about sustainability and circularity?
Is it really necessary to purchase one or the other object or some, item they purchase? To really ask question in order to have a meaningful purchase list, shopping attitude. The consumer should ask more where it is coming from, how it is made, in order to understand. And in order as well to understand the impact it might create. Though we are not there yet, we will get there, right? And then consumers will be able to refuse and say, look, I do not have enough information about this product. For example, this is a funny thing. I mean, if you purchase a car which costs thousands of euros, you really research and you compare and whatever it is, because it has a high value. If you buy a tiny piece, you just mentioned the example before, you just get it out of the pocket, you pay it, you use it, you throw it away. So here as well, there has to be a paradigm shift on how do I deal with certain things? How do I value what I buy? I don't buy it because, in order to throw it away when I don't want it anymore. Same with the car, you do not throw it away. Yes, you find definitely ways to sell it or whatever, but tiny things are being thrown away, and this has to change. So
change.
What I would love to see is a more educated consumer. I hope I'm not too snobbish here, but right, and more educated consumer to make the right decisions. But to make the right decisions, you have to ask thousands of questions, or never stop questioning whatever it is. Yeah, and demand those questions, meaning approaching the industry. Where is it coming from? How is it made? Right, and what is the impact it creates?
Even Annabelle Hutter from Santa's Textiles, she was saying if you approach a business and they can't answer your questions, that's your first red flag. And I mean, I think it goes without saying. It goes back to what you said, be as transparent as possible and honest as possible wherever you can, and where you can't be, admit that you don't know yet. We're working towards these statistics, we're working towards X, Y, and Z, and that's when people can start. Actually, they have all the information they need, like you said with the car example, then they can make their conscious decision and decide where they want to go further. So yes, it's 1,000,001 questions. I don't think the questions ever will end or need to end, but I think just a matter from your experience and insights, it's just really fascinating to hear that everyone is saying the same things. Everyone is the same. There's a whole common pattern and theme, and it's just eye-opening, because it's just a matter of why is like the generations and generations before perhaps my age are not asking those questions, perhaps it was never brought to light until recently. So it's very interesting to see where maybe we would be if we have an interview with you in the next 5 years, and where this conversation will take us, and hopefully there will be more positive change. But do you think there will be kind of a massive change or a massive step towards a sustainable approach in all fashion, like a fashion industry? Do you think, what's the time span do you think that we'll be able to say, okay, we finally reached that stage, or is it not foreseeable just yet?
million approaches out. Whether they are right or wrong, the future will show us. Whether they are really creating an impact, we will see as well. One thing for sure, over the last 20 years, there is a change in consumer perception, though we still have, I have to say, we still have the fast fashion industry. But this might change as well. I wish that there will be a paradigm shift towards more responsible consumption, towards more educated consumers, towards being more sustainable or more responsible, right? Being just more responsible, and then you can fit the sustainability or squeeze it in here. Whether this is in 5 years, whether it's in 10 years, well, I've mentioned already the Sustainable Developing Goals 2030. Well, you can say we have still 9 years to go, or we have only 9 years to go, right? I'm in favor for the second. We only have 9 years to go, right? And if this might not be too late. I don't know. We will see. But we can only solve this together. Right?
Yeah.
This is the most important thing.
Can only do it together, and back to that whole seeing the world as a whole again, and rather than separate countries all working it against each other. Like the future is collaboration and no longer competition. And I mean, going through all the guests, like it's just become more prevalent with each time I interview someone that it is a matter of working together to move forward. And absolutely loved this interview with you. I've been dying to chat to you again from when we last spoke. So thank you so much, Reiner, for your time. It's just, this will definitely not be the end to our conversation. It will continue further. Perhaps even if we have other questions from our audience, we can get you on a call again, because you have a lot of insights and a lot of experience from different angles. And I mean, now working obviously in Vietnam and coming from Europe, it must be a completely different shift and a different mentality that you have to kind of implement and perhaps educate those around you. Do you perhaps see that, like if you're in your day-to-day, that you kind of need to change the mindset around you? Do you do it in incremental steps, or if it's a matter of a big push?
Definitely not a big push. This as a matter of incremental steps. It's really step by step. And the thing is, when you figure out, well, this approach didn't work or didn't work out, you have to redo it. You have to do it again, again, and again, and again, until it makes click, and then you can do the next step. Mm-hmm. But I think the same counts for Europe, right? I mean, yes, you can wet someone if you pull just an entire bucket of water over someone. Yes, he's completely wet. Or if you do it step by step, but what is the biggest impact here? Step by step by step by step.
Love that. The biggest impact step by step.
And never giving up, right? Never being frustrated and say, oh my God, I have done it 1,000 times. Do I have to do it 100 times again? Yes, you have. Most likely you have to do it again. Right?
I mean, that's life goal, so. I love your approach and I love your positivity. It really is just freshening, and seeing you as a higher industry member having this positivity, knowing that change is foreseeable. It's a matter of not giving up. It's a matter of working within your homes, and then slowly planting that seed in your community. So it is an incremental steps to change, and hopefully that change comes sooner than we hope. But it is a matter until the future unfolds itself, then time will tell, I guess. Reiner, I absolutely love this conversation with you. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that I got to squeeze in a bit more few questions as we just were conversational. Like, I'm glad that it was a bit more relaxed than like just a Q&A back and forth.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much.